So the first place to start, if we want to talk about what story means in our lives, is to start by thinking of ourselves as characters. And that's to simply ask the question, who are you? Hopefully we're ready to accept the fact that who our children are, who they are, is in some way shaped by where they've been. And that is simply their story. But the same goes for us as characters in our own stories. That we're ready to accept that dynamic for our kids, but very rarely do we think about it in terms of ourselves, of how did I get here? Why am I the kind of parent that I am? Why do I respond to certain behaviors in my children in a certain way? Why do I personally get so anxious when certain things happen? And these are all parts of my story if I'm willing to accept that the past affects the future, not just with my kids, but also with me. And if I'm willing to dig into my story and think about myself as a character, we stop asking ourselves, what do I want? And instead we just go over, well, here's what I have to do today. Instead of, what do you want to make today? And that question should grab you. It should inspire you. It should cause you to start thinking about the possibilities for today instead of the obligations. And that kind of question, this story question of what do you want? Where are you going? Should change the way that we look at tomorrow, the week after, and the year to come. What do you want? Where are you going? What do you want to make today? And I think especially as Christians, and I know I struggled with this for a long time, we misunderstand conflict. We think conflict means, at least I did, that God isn't on our side. Even though the Bible tells us that God is with the poor and the downtrodden and the afflicted and the suffering. In other words, conflict is part of the deal. Conflict is not a warning sign that you stepped outside of what God wants for you. In fact, in some sense, it may be very much confirmation that you're following the story that God has for you, and that what you want is worthwhile, and it has high stakes, and it's important. Because there are people or forces that are not all that interested in you getting it. Because the story that we tell, first of all, it impacts us. The story that we tell both reflects and shapes who we are and how we see the world. Not to mention the people around us, our families, our friends, our spouses, our communities, whoever's watching, the story that we tell shapes the people around us. The power of story for our families is to frame that loss. Again, to look at who we are as characters, what we want as our objective, the conflict that we're willing to overcome to get it.